Hey guys and gals, welcome to day 5. Yesterday we explored the DOM, learned how to select and create DOM elements using JavaScript, and we learned how to use a very popular library called jQuery. The assignment was to create a website without using HTML, but rather do it all with JavaScript and jQuery. While this isn't how we would normally go about creating a website, I hope you gave it a shot because it is a great learning experiment and it will make you a better developer much quicker. If you didn't finish, pause the video, give it a shot. Otherwise, let's go explore one possible solution. Them right here. So these are cool facts. I'm going to use these as a little animated fact display. So I want for one fact to animate onto my web page at a time randomly. So I started making some variables. You can use var. I use const because I'm not going to overwrite this variable. This will be the title for my page. I actually don't even think I use this, to be honest. So here's an object with some CSS. I actually copied this CSS off a Google image that I uploaded from a vacation I took, and I just made some height, width, margin properties. I'm going to add this onto a div to turn it into an image. I have a list of topics that I'm interested in other than programming, and I'm going to make a paragraph that just says I like science, literature, JavaScript, etc. Here's an object of colors that I picked out for the site. And then we are going to begin. So I decided to sort of mix it up here to show some examples. I'm going to do half of this in the global scope. So this is global scope. And then I'm going to do the other half inside functions. It's better to do everything in functions and call those functions, but this is just easier to read in the lesson. So I pass the body of the document, which will be this whole page, into a jQuery object, and then I append this HTML that I just wrote out. And these are just basically divs. You could write div. I use section. It's more semantic. And I just made an empty HTML element for my header, an empty one for the stuff about me, and then an empty one for some fun facts. The reason I added IDs is so that when I'm writing my jQuery, I can use the IDs as a selector to grab those elements and then append other HTML or other elements into them. And I wanted to put a background color on the page, so I used colors.tan, which would be this color, and I set it to the background property of the CSS. I'm going to run the page now before I run through all of this because I think it'll just be easier if you can see it while I talk about it. So I'm going to hit run. So this is the page that we are making, or that I decided to make. There's that image I discussed. These are the fun facts. Here's the title. Here's the literature, JavaScript, poker, chess. Those are from this topics array. So essentially, now that I have these sections in the page, which if we jumped out and inspected, we can see here are the 3 sections. And of course, they have other stuff in them by the time we're looking at it. So first I grab the header, I put it in a variable, I use the $sign so that I know it's a jQuery object, and even though this is broken up onto 2 lines, this is just chaining off of this. So it would actually be the same if I wrote this, right? It's just easier not to always have to write out the variable that we're working with. So we grab the header section and then we add this HTML to it. It's just an H2 tag. So a header that says my HTML JavaScript website, but the HTML is crossed out as we can see here. That's what the S tag does. So this returns the header. So, we did HTML off of this, but it just returns the header. So, like if I ended this line here, then the header variable is set to this. Even if I ended the line here, the header variable is still set to this because the HTML method just adds this as the HTML to header, and it still just returns the header to this variable. So I could have continued by doing header append, but like I said, I like to chain them. So off of here, I am running append to the header, and I'm just appending a div with the class myImage. And then here, I am finding the div with class myImage. And again, I could have done this. I'm finding that image, and then I'm adding the CSS that makes this image appear, which is this big chunk right here, this CSS here. So I'm just using the jQuery CSS method, and I'm adding that object as CSS to the myImage div, which is, it's the div with the image in it, basically. And when I do that, the image appears, and it's instantaneous because, we didn't set any timers or anything. Right, when I run this, the div just appears. And so I was calling pink border. Now there's no border. And I think, so the pink border function, this just adds a pink border to any div or any jQuery object that we pass in here. So we can pass an element or a jQuery collection, and I basically just wrap it in a jQuery collection just to make sure it is jQuery, because this could be a string, a selector, or it could be anything. So regardless if it is a jQuery object, I still pass it into jQuery before setting the CSS, and I just make a border with the CSS, and then I return it. So it returns this. So pink border, the function, will return just whatever this jQuery object is. And because of that, and this actually, I think, illustrates chaining pretty well. So here, I can wrap this thing right here. And I'm wrapping the myImage div. If we run this, we get a pink border around the myImage because that's what we're passing into pink border. But if we wrap, so we can wrap this entire thing, send this entire thing into pink border, and if we run it, we're going to get the same result because we're running CSS on myImage, and the CSS method is just going to return the myImage, and that's what's passed into pink border. So it doesn't matter how we wrap it, and pink border returns a jQuery object. So if we, even if we did myImage like that, it's returning the jQuery object. So myImage is actually this element, and we can just chain CSS off it. So it's just, you can do this many different ways. That's why I wanted you to kind of do this, to play around with things. So to speed it up, right here we're making a paragraph, putting a border around it. It returns a jQuery object, so we can run CSS off it. And this is just giving some margins, giving it a background color of beige, and then adding text to the paragraph. And the text just says, my name is Michael, I'm a JavaScript developer. And it says, I enjoy topics.join. So this just takes the topics array and it joins it into a string, and it uses a comma and a space to glue them all together. So you can see that here, how it glued all these words together with a comma and a space. And that's not a jQuery thing, that's an array thing. So then now I'd have this paragraph, but it wouldn't be on the page. If I run this, we're not going to see that paragraph, right? And the reason is because we have the paragraph but we haven't appended it to anything. And that's what this final part did. It just takes the paragraph jQuery object and it appends it to whatever matches this selector, the ID about. And that's going to be that middle section of the page right here. So it's appending it there. So the last thing that I did was this fun facts little thing that's running at the bottom. This is actually not very hard to do at all with jQuery. So basically, we make a variable fun facts, and then we pass it to this animate facts thing. So to make the fun facts, first I call this build facts function. This looks like a lot of stuff, but really it's not, because this is all CSS. So it really is a small function, and all it's doing is just it's looping over the facts array. So it's grabbing each fact, each little one of these texts, and then it just creates a jQuery object that builds an h3 tag with that fact in the middle. So it's making a header tag with that fact in the middle. It's giving it a class of fun fact, and then I just chain off it and put some CSS on it, and then we just take fun facts, which is the whole section here, and we append next fact. And if we didn't call the animate facts function, which we haven't looked at yet, but if we didn't call that, we would just have all these facts here on the page. So that's what the build facts function does. It puts all these facts into the page. And then it returns all the facts. All right, it does that just by selecting them because we gave them a class fun fact. So it's able to select them by class, and it just returns a jQuery object. And so now that's what's in this variable. And so then we pass that variable to the animate facts function, which is right here. And so all this does is we pass in fun facts, so it goes into this function, and we just say, okay, so we have all facts, which we just get by passing this into the jQuery object. We actually don't have to do that. You would do that to sort of protect yourself in case a non-jQuery object was passed in, or a selector. Like we could even, so we could actually take this and we could pass that string into animate facts, right? And because we protected ourselves by wrapping this argument in a jQuery function, jQuery is going to handle turning that into a collection of whatever elements match this selector. So the first thing we do with all facts is we hide them. Even though we hide them though, because it's just a jQuery method, it's still returning this collection to the variable all facts. So even though they're hidden, we still have access to them. And then we set an interval, and this is just shorthand for a function. So we set interval, we pass a function in, and the function runs for about 4 seconds. And all it does is just every 4 seconds, it is going to find any hidden facts. And hidden facts are just those that don't have the class visible. And the class visible doesn't do anything. So we're going to add that on manually every time we make a fact visible. So we have hidden facts. We find the visible fact, which the first time around this will be empty because it's going to grab all facts. So that'll be 11 hidden facts. It's going to filter them to just find the ones that have the class visible, which would be none of them. So this will be an empty object. Here, we're just getting a random number, which is going to be an index for, the list item. And we just get that by randomly grabbing a number between 0 and the length of the hidden facts collection, which is 11, I believe. And then we just take the visible fact, which we know there is none now, but there will be on subsequent runs, and we slide it up. So it disappears over half a second, and then we remove the class visible. So nothing happens now here because there are no visible list items, technically. We can see them now because I haven't ran the code again since they've been hidden. And then all this has to do is it takes the hidden facts, which will be every single fact, it grabs the index equal to I, our random index, and then it waits for almost a second, and it does that because it's waiting for this to slide up, and then it slides down the fact we want to unhide, and slide down will automatically make it visible, just like slide up will make this one invisible. And just like here we're removing the class visible, here we add a class visible. And the reason we do that is because we want to be able to find this fact that we are sliding down when this function runs again in almost 4 seconds. So when it runs again, it'll be able to find the visible fact, get rid of it, and slide down another random fact. And so it just looks like this.